Guys, it's Manga time once again. I'm here today to bring you my review of Bleach 660, The Visible Answer. Now guys, please subscribe to my channel if you like the review. I'd really appreciate the support, and if you give the video a thumbs up, that'd also be really great. Now I think the chapter title this week refers to a couple of things. I think The Visible Answer refers to the fact that Uryu's answer to Haschwalth is going to be something that everyone will see, because it's either going to be him attacking Ichigo and the others or turning on Haschwalth. But what I think the visible answer mainly refers to, however, is Haschwalth saying he already sees what Uryu is going to do. This is an interesting chapter, this one. Very, very short, I thought. I thought it was over like that, and I was like, I read it, and I was like, God, I waited a week for this, and it's over in about a minute, so that's a little bit depressing. On second read, it's a bit better. This is a chapter that I think is going to be quite divisive. Some of it's a bit stupid. No, I don't know if it's stupid is the right word, but it just seems a bit easy. I'll get into it as I get into the review. So it starts off with Uryu being thrown through the wall, as at the end of last week's chapter. And there's a couple of drawing errors in this week as well. In the very first panel of Chad and Orihime, Chad doesn't have a beard anymore, which is kind of weird. But yeah, they're running, as we basically said last week. Chad and Orihime show up, and they arrive when Ichigo is there, and obviously Ichigo is facing down with Uryu, and we get a pretty cool page, actually, of Uryu just looking at Ichigo, and then we get a slash of all their faces. Yeah, really, that's actually a really cool page. Then Haschwalth arrives, and he's wearing just a regular soldat boot in this scene, which is weird, because in the last scene he's wearing his usual shoes, so interesting how Kubo makes these kind of mistakes. But anyway, Haschwalth arrives, and he's like, it appears as though all the players have arrived. Now, you guys last week said in the comments that you thought that Haschwalth had set this up intentionally using the Almighty, and it looks like you were right. He says, it appears all the players have arrived, and Ichigo's like, what's with that guy's eyes? They're the same as Yuhava's. And Haschwalth's like, oh, what good fortune, Uryu, it seems fate is lending a hand to your proof, so go on, prove it to me. And just like, I said last week, and I'm pretty sure we all thought last week, Haschwalth basically says, if you're not a traitor, then kill each and every one of these guys. So Haschwalth's showing a much more forward, much more sadistic personality than before, so I definitely think the theory that his personality changes to match Yuhava's when it's nighttime is legit. Like, that does seem to happen. He didn't have the Almighty before. It would have been interesting to see him fight Basby, actually, when he had this personality, because I think he'd have been a lot more open about the way he was actually feeling, rather than essentially doing most of the fight in silence. Uryu obviously is not happy with this, but Haschwalth, in a super creepy picture, like seriously, Haschwalth is looking creepier by the minute. He's like, I can already see exactly how you're going to respond to Ishida Uryu. And that's interesting. So Haschwalth uses the future to basically see that Uryu is going to betray him. But Uryu maybe doesn't get this yet, I think. And so he tries to prove his innocence, the fact that he's not a traitor by attacking Ichigo. And I'm not going to lie, when Haschwalth went all creepy like this and Uryu fired an arrow, I was like, Jesus, he's turning against Haschwalth, but no. He's firing an arrow at Ichigo. This action sequence isn't bad, and I'm glad these two are actually clashing. Finally, something is actually happening here. It's not terrible, it's a little bit half-hearted, though. And maybe that's the idea, because Uryu's clearly not properly in this, Ichigo's not properly in this, so maybe that's the idea. But Ichigo dodges Uryu's arrows, and he pulls his sword out, and he leaps at him. Basically, Uryu fires another arrow at him, and then we get some pretty good movement, actually, in this battle. Ichigo clashes, he clashes his sword against Uryu's bow, which is kind of neat. And then the dialogue in this chapter is just a bit annoying as well, but we'll get into that in a minute. But Ichigo's like, what are you trying to do, Ishida, as always? And then he says, picking a fight with us just because that guy's telling you to, is that really what you want? And this bit's very cool, because Ishida pulls out his Seal Schneider, which we haven't seen in ages, and tries to attack Ichigo with it. Ichigo leaps off one of the pillars before Uryu spins the Seal Schneider and fires it at Ichigo like an arrow. That's very cool. That's a nice little interaction there. The arrow hits the floor that Ichigo's landing on, and basically Ichigo goes straight through the ground. I have to be honest, I think this bit's a little confusing. I know what happens, that's why I'm explaining it now, but it's not drawn very well. I've got to be completely honest. And I think the reason for that is because Kubo doesn't put any detail into his background, so really it's hard to tell that Ichigo's actually kind of going to a different level. But Ichigo, he drops Chad grabs his sword, and then they all start to fall because Uryu fires some more arrows at the ground that Chad's on, and then Orihime saves them with the Santen Keshin. That's basically what happens. There's an entire page dedicated to the dust from them falling, which a little bit annoying, not gonna lie, but oh well. So Chad's like, "Oh my god, are you alright, Inoue?" And she's like, "Yeah, I was able to activate Santen Keshin in time." And I like this bit because Ichigo's just standing. He's already standing, and he's just staring straight at Uryu, who's also down there with them now. And there's a quite a determined look on it in Ichigo's face, and he kind of calms down a little bit now, and he's like, "Tell me, Ishida, why is it you're siding with the Quincy's, and why is it you insist on fighting us?" And now we start to get some answers. Whether or not people will consider these answers to be satisfactory is another thing. So basically, Ichigo's like, if I can understand where you're coming from, then I'll do whatever I have to do, but at least I'll know, what's going on with you. And Uryu's like, oh, well, if you can't understand where I'm coming from, and he's being very, very cryptic and obtuse, and it's weird because there doesn't seem to be any reason for him to be when he reveals his motivation. Uryu then throws this thing called the Sun Key at them, and I have to say the whole Gate of the Sun thing has been very, very weird. As far as we've been aware, the Quincy used shadows to move around, and the Gate of the Sun has been mentioned maybe 3 times, and it's been so, we've never seen anyone actually use it. The closest we got was Basby and the others appearing after having used it. And so the Sun Key is weird, because it's just never been, why is it here? It's weird. It's a cool idea, and I presume the Sun Key creates the shadows, but I don't know. But anyway, Uryu reveals... Now, this bit actually is probably the most interesting part of the whole chapter, because I think it's got some implications for the rest of the series. Uryu says, these have been handed out to each and every Sternritter. By holding these above the metal plates known as the Sun Gates, set up in various locations around Wahrwelt, you can teleport to other Sun Gates. This, of course, as we know, doesn't just apply to Wahrwelt, because Gate of the Sun was mentioned literally at the very beginning of the arc when the Sternritters invaded Soul Society. So Uryu says, if you keep going left from here, there'll be some stairs heading down. And this is the most interesting bit. Follow those steps down, and there should be a Sun Gate that has already been set up there to facilitate the invasion into the real world. What? Before we move on, I want to address this. So, it's very weird that this is coming up in such a blasé fashion, but the Quincy are preparing to invade the real world? With who, might I ask, because there's like 3 Sternritters left who are active. Unless my theory that Yuhava's going to resurrect a bunch of the old Sternritters actually does happen, or it's just going to be an invasion of the Soldats. Now, I do think something like that could also still happen, because I think it would be a good way of showcasing some other characters if the Soldats attacked the human world. So, say that happened, you would have characters like Jackie, Tristan, Mo. Both those couple of Fullbringers will probably fight back. Tessai and that lot might fight back. Although, quite frankly, we want to see Tessai do something proper. Maybe even Ichigo's friends would start fighting. I think that's possibly what's going to happen. But it's very weird that it's so blasé. Like, Yuhava's not said anything about invading the real world yet. So that's very odd. But I would like it if he resurrected his Sternritter to do that. But the fact of the matter is, most of the fighting seems to basically be done now. I'm sure there's probably more to come. Well, there better be, because if there's not, the Royal Guard were like the most let down group in the entire series. But if there is more fighting to come, if there isn't more fighting to come, then it's literally just going to be, we're going to invade the human world with just Soldats, and then we're going to get our ass kicked by the secondary characters. That's pretty much what that's going to be, I think. But anyway, Uryu's like, use it, take your friends back there and leave, and he basically says, I will stay behind and take down Wahrwelt myself. And now we finally get Uryu's reasoning behind, presumably, joining the Quincy. This is presumably his reasoning, anyway. And he says, once I activate all the chips I left behind at various locations throughout Wahrwelt, all the accumulated ratio will be linked up and will without a doubt destroy this place. So basically, he is going to turn Wahrwelt into a massive samurai glove that will detonate itself, and then you won't be able to do anything with it anymore. So Ichigo's like, what are you talking about? You sound crazy. And then, oh man, see, this is a bit silly, this bit. Uryu's entire reasoning for betraying everyone was that he figured Ichigo would say he sounds crazy. But Uryu literally explains his entire motivations, so why? It's just so, why wouldn't he just be like, Ichigo, look, I've got this idea, I'm going to spread these things all over the Quincy Palace, okay? And they'll be able to destroy everything. Help me. And then they'll get the Shinigami to help them. And then basically they could have been spared. Like, seriously, because Ichigo's like, you don't have to do any of this. All we need to do is just defeat Yaharva and we'll be fine. I don't quite know why he thinks that either, since there's no Soul King if Yaharva gets killed. But Uryu's like, that isn't possible. There's no way to defeat him. No way anymore, but there was plenty of way to defeat him, like, way back before you helped them destroy the Soul King. That's a bit weird. It seems like this whole Uryu traitor storyline has now ended in a very half-assed manner. Granted, we might get an amazing fight out of it with what happens at the end of this chapter, but for the most part, it seems to have ended on a bit of a flat note. That Uryu, I mean, we all knew Uryu wasn't evil. I don't think there was ever any question in that. But seriously, his whole motivation for not telling anyone was that he thought Ichigo would say he sounds stupid. So he didn't literally told no one. I assume maybe like Ryuken knows, perhaps. But it wouldn't surprise me maybe if Ryuken was aiding him somehow. But it's so weird. Like, seriously, they've been friends and they've fought together in so much shit. And then he's just like, you know what? I'm not going to tell you anything. And I'm going to try and do this ridiculous plan, which might work, might not. And if it doesn't work, well, I've literally screwed everybody. And if it does work, I've screwed everybody anyway, because I've already helped destroy the Soul King. So, bit weird. I'm not going to lie. Let me know in the comments below what you think of what seems to be the resolution of this storyline. Because Ichigo then, Ichigo says, why does it have to be you alone that takes care of things? And Uryu says that this is something I can do and no one else can. And he says, these destruction chips were passed down from me by my master. They were created, by the Sanrei glove. And he says only my Ryatsu can activate them, and that seems to be his justification, but that doesn't mean he had to do it alone. He could have used everyone else's help, and then when the time comes, use his Ryatsu to activate them. So, I don't know. It seems like Uryu's definitely taken one hell of an idiot ball when it comes to this plan, but whatever. Whatever. He says, I came to this plan after careful thought and consideration, and there really is no other way. I really could not have asked all of the Gotei 13 for their help in this plan, and instead I turned my back on all of you. And you made me... What if one of the captains had killed him or something? Then it'd be done. But anyway, he says, now that I've spread it out for you, hurry and go, before Haschwalth notices something's amiss. And I tell you something else that's weird. Kubo seems to have dropped the Uryu being some massively powerful dude now. Because he's supposedly still got the Shrift A, and he drank Yaharva's blood. And Yaharva said to the Sturmator, you will see this man's power in the battles to come. But Uryu hasn't done anything, literally hasn't done anything, and now he's about to fight Haschwalth. And it seems a bit like Yaharva was kind of... Not Yaharva, sorry, Kubo has kind of gone like, you know what, actually, let's tone this down a bit. Uryu's not actually going to be crazy, he's not actually going to be evil. So, for me, it's a little disappointing that the resolution of this traitor arc, essentially, has been so... I don't want to say easy, because this fight with Haschwalth could be pretty good. And some crazy shit could go down. Because the last page is really, really cool. Haschwalth arrives, and he's like, before he notices, when exactly was that? Because Haschwalth already known this was going to happen, as he explicitly said, so I know. But he then emerges from the shadows in some very cool panels. And he says, I can already see exactly how you're going to respond, Ishida Uryu, looking so evil. He's got basically the top half of his body is like cloaked in darkness to make him look like Yaharva. I don't think he's actually changing, but he looks like Yaharva, and that's the point, I think. Although the bit that you can see of his face looks like Aizen, so... But anyway, yeah, he looks super evil, and I think that's a very, very cool panel, and a very cool way of entering a fight as well, because, there's a real good impression that Haschwalth is like this crazy villain who's like a proper high-end bad guy. So yeah, I'm super psyched, actually, about this potential fight. Haschwalth, unless he's really, really OP, is in a bit of trouble, though, because literally everyone is still there. It's not like Ichigo and the others have gone. So presumably this is going to be Ichigo and Uryu and everyone else versus Haschwalth. Ichigo goes Bankai, Uryu goes Let's Steal. Hopefully this is all balls to the wall, shit's getting real fight. Because seriously, if that happens, then this could be amazing. And something else that's surprising, as well as this is happening before Gerard and Askin have been defeated. So I'm interested to see what Kubo does there. Interesting chapter. Interesting chapter, definitely. We got a lot of answers to things we have been waiting for a long time. It's just a question for you if those answers are satisfactory or not. For me, I'm going to give the chapter a 3 out of 5. I didn't think it was amazing. The little skirmish between Uryu and Ichigo is interesting enough, but not great. That transition bit wasn't drawn very well. That was kind of sloppily handled, I think. Everything with Haschwalth is still really cool, though. And everything between Haschwalth and Uryu is still really great. Set up for next week looks awesome. But, oh man, Uryu's motivations, I don't know. Sounds a bit dumb to me that he wouldn't just tell everyone, but, you know, whatever. I didn't think that this would be the culmination of everything. I kind of thought there might be a bit more to it than this. But let me know in the comments below what you think about Uryu's plan, his motivations for not telling people, and all that sort of thing. What do you think's going to happen next week? Is this fight going to be mad and crazy, or are we going to skip to another thing first? I don't know. Let me know though, guys. Let me know. I'd super appreciate it. Until next time though, guys, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you later.